Thanks, Joey. Good afternoon, everyone. I am hoping that the format is going to be only a few minutes of me talking at you and a lot more time dedicated to questions and discussions and how everyone else is tackling this or what questions you might have for us. So I am Marian Marquardt. I'm the Associate Director for Web Services for the School of Humanities and Sciences at Stanford. And what we're talking about today, sort of moving to a more proactive and strategic and forward way of supporting our units and our sites and our site editors. Our agenda, first thing, we're going to talk about what we used to call maintenance reports. We're now calling them continuous care reports. Then we're going to talk a little bit about what we've been doing for empowering and upskilling our editors, a little bit about team culture, and then a lot of time about you, hopefully, questions you have for me. For context, roughly speaking, really big orders of magnitude, right? H&S has its own H&S specific Drupal platform. It sits on the stack that some pieces of it are shared with Stanford, other pieces are not. We have about 600 editors on the H&S specific platform. H&S, like every unit at Stanford, also has a whole lot of sites that were started somewhere else on another platform. And so we have a couple hundred editors in that situation as well. So rough order of magnitude to sort of situate us today. We have a little over 100 sites on the H&S platform, a little less than 1,000 editors, a little more than 1 million pieces of content that we're supporting with a small team. The issue has been for a number of years that the school units didn't really have a culture of taking care of their sites on an ongoing basis, right? It was the big redo, think about it for a little bit, forget about it for a number of years. A few years later, realize there's a new chair, there's a new faculty, there's a new leadership, there's a new something. Let's redo it all. And then we think about it, and then we realize a lot of the content's been out of date. This was creating a whole number of problems, including keeping the set of editors up to date, keeping the content up to date, keeping it fresh in the minds of our editors. And also, to be fair, for most of our editors, being a website editor is 5th or 6th or 7th on the list of job responsibility, right? It's just not usually the first thing they're hired for. One of the key sort of keystone habits we've changed to tackle the culture of taking care of their website is really this idea of the maintenance reports that we're now calling the continuous care reports. By sending those out, and we are sending them out 3 times a year, by sending them out 3 times a year, we're having a conversation with them at least 3 times a year about who's on their site, what's on their site, what else they could be thinking about to keep things current and relevant. And I'm happy to share examples of what this reports look like, but essentially they're Google Sheets that are shared, 1 per unit. And as you can see, they've evolved. So we started almost accidentally when the box retirement was announced. And to get ahead of a ton of thousands of broken links, we thought, let's just crawl our sites, figure out where there's links from websites to box, let our units know about this ahead of time, give them a chance to get ahead of the problem, sort of hold their hands ahead of the retirement of box. And that sort of kicked things off. And then from there, we thought, well, wouldn't it be great if we also told them all the broken links on their sites and everybody who's able to edit parts of their site and who's able to look into Google Analytics and maybe remind them that they have access to Google Analytics. So that was spring, summer of last year. In the fall, we still send out broken links in the set of editors, but we added 2 things around accessibility. And Joey, I'm sure, will be happy to hear about that. So we sent one, which was about the alt text on their images. That is the single biggest volume of issue that we see on our site, is the number of images that don't have alt text. And then the other thing we sent, which was a sharper, just a tougher nut to crack, was what videos were missing proper captions, what audio podcast episodes typically were missing transcripts. That was in the fall. That took an enormous amount of inventorying and gathering all the information. And then Most recently, what we sent out was still broken links, still editors. I think we're never going to get away from those, right? Those are sort of the bread and butter of this maintenance report. We leverage something that our site improve tool gives us access to, which is what documents are posted on their sites that are at least 3 years old. And just give them a sense of, hey, just take a look at this, right? Maybe it's perfectly okay. Maybe these are publications from a faculty member. They've been publishing for 30 years. The fact that there's documents more than 3 years old is probably not a red flag. Or maybe this is more of an administrative site. Having some documents that are more than 3 years old, let's make sure they're still the most relevant ones, that they're up to date, that it's the most recent version of those documents. The other thing we sent in the most recent version of the continuous care reports is an explanation of importers. We realized that it's been a couple of years since most of those sites have been launched, sometimes more. People forget over time what importers are running on their sites, how often they're running, how they're set up, and the nuances of it. So we gave them information where it was relevant about 4 types of importers. People importers, what are we pulling in from Stanford profiles? Are we pulling it by organization code? Are we pulling it by work group? How often that comes in? We told them how we're pulling information from Stanford events and how often that happens and where they can go to modify that by organization. We told them the 2 types of course importers we might have on their site, either by subject code or by course tags. And then a very small number of our units also have news importers. And if they did have one, then we'd give them that information as well. And so that started a conversation. What we've moved from is less, here's what's broken, and it's more, here's what's happening. FYI, this feels relevant. We've noticed a pattern of a lot of questions coming up around this. We're getting ahead of this. Any questions so far?
None are in the chat.
Thanks, Joey. All right. The other thing I want to talk about is how do we empower and upskill our site owners? So again, this is not their primary responsibility. And the university's been doing an enormous push around accessibility. How do we take site owners who've never thought about their sites from the lens of website digital accessibility to a place where they understand things like heading structures, alt text. Really the big one that we wanted to get to was heading structure. How do users start thinking about their web page and think about it in a way that's structured with a heading structure? It was a really big gap between where we wanted them to get to and where they were at the beginning. We also wanted to get to the place where the feedback loop was shorter, because right now in the past, the experience was they edit sites. Can you hear me?
Yes, there was a bit of a pause there, but we can hear you again.
Okay. If it happens again, I'll turn off my video, just let me know. So I think what I was trying to say was there's a big gap between where we wanted them to get to and where we were starting from. And we also wanted to shorten the feedback loop.
We're getting another pause, maybe, as you suggested, trying without video.
Because all right, let's try this way. So to shorten the feedback loop from the content they were editing, the accessibility issues they were putting up on sites, us noticing them, us having a conversation with them changing and fixing the issues. And so what we did is we introduced a module in Drupal called Editorially. It's a module that can be installed on sites. And when an editor is logged in, when they're looking at a page or after they've edited a page, they get instant feedback inside their page that tells them, here's how this page is faring from a digital accessibility perspective. There are alerts or warnings or information bits inside the individual page. You can click through them. You can see this image here is missing alt text. This heading structure is looking funny. And that has been really well received. It's only visible to editors. It's not visible to end users. And it's allowed us to start also building an understanding of how digital accessibility is looking at per se, right? So we have to take them from how they've been thinking about their site. Am I telling the information? Am I giving the information that I want to give to my students, my faculty, my prospective grad students, and so on? And we started also adding to that, what is the information that is perceived from a digital accessibility perspective, so they can start to build that understanding as well. The other thing we're doing, and I won't touch on this too much because this is not just an accessibility session, but we have built a custom training for our editors. So we analyzed all of the issues we've been seeing on their sites. We analyzed the support tickets we were seeing that were related to digital accessibility, and we pulled together a list of all the issues that we needed them to know based on the capabilities that they have. So we sort of sorted the things that we can do on the platform on their behalf from the things that they can do in the content themselves. And then based on this, we looked at what's the smallest amount of courses they can take in the DQ University accessibility tool to then get all the information we want them to have. And we'll be rolling this out to all new editors first. So all new editors will have to go through that training before they can edit a site. And then we'll roll it out to all existing editors. And then down the road at some point, then we'll have it in such a way that only editors who've gone through the training can edit sites, but that's further down the road. Right, impact on the team, impact of the team. When I was talking to my team about this session, they kept wanting me to include something about team culture, and it took me a minute to understand why. And I think essentially what they were saying is, for our small team to be able to support this many hundreds of people, we had to develop practices to have a really resilient team. That we just couldn't continue to give or be more strategic, meet our units where they're at without also shoring up care for our own. So the impact on the team is, in a way, it's been lifting a burden because we've taken away the burden of caring about the digital accessibility, caring about the content, caring about the upkeep of the site, and sharing that burden with our units more. The other thing the team wanted me to talk about is protecting that unique team culture that we've created. So I'll just mention a couple of things, and some of them are in the room if they want to chime in. We start all of our 4 team meetings with a game, and we rotate the type of game, so different folks get their favorite games. It allows us to start from a place where we're all humans and we all need a little bit of a de-stress in the middle of the day before we get to the big work that we're going to do. We also allocate the first 10 minutes. Our meetings start 10 minutes after the hour. We're all remote now. It allows us to get some breaks throughout the day, so we don't go back to back and rushing from one meeting to another and they're all overlapping. We get at least 5 minutes to take a bathroom break, water, or
Marion, it's starting to break
the
up.
dog or whatever it is. And we take a break from our daily work and we really look at retro. So I wish I knew what to do, Joey.
It's coming.
If I need to repeat anything. Okay.
I think what I heard last was about taking breaks, starting at 10 minutes after.
We do residencies 3 times a year. So we come in person for 4 days and we do a retrospective. So looking back, figuring out what we want to tweak, and we do strategic planning for the work ahead so that we're able to not just be in a responsive mode, but also be much more proactive about the type of work that we want to do and how we're going to allocate it. And I think the other thing that's been key is the very consultative and collaborative approach of the team. We used to always work in pairs. That's shifted a little bit more as now folks own more of their own responsibilities. But they can always call for an assist, right? No one has to sort of suffer on their own through a hard problem. They can always say, hey, I could use a little bit of your time to work on this. When can we make this happen? I don't know if there's any of our team members who want to chime in here. Otherwise, you'll have a chance later on. Some of the lessons learned. We created a lot of resources to put at the fingertips of our units. Right, so to give them the right information, we also thought about what is the right format for the information. We have created videos that they can learn from. We have created written user wiki. We have a community of practice for our editors in Slack that they can come to. We have office hours they can come to. We have a newsletter where they can read about it more formally. Other lessons learned. I mean, I think this quote is generally attributed to Desmond Tutu, but sort of at the same time as you're helping people, so at the same time as we're pulling people out of the river, we also have to go upstream and figure out why they're falling. And I think that's essentially this support model, right? You can't just continue to meet them where things are failing. You've got to figure out upstream, what can we do to teach them, upskill them, empower them, so that we see fewer of those support problems. And interestingly, we're also seeing fewer requests at the moment for major site redos, and we're seeing more smaller refreshes, which is great, right? I'm hoping that this is a consequence of this new model, that the sites are not getting so far off of where they should be, that we need to start from scratch regularly. And giving the right amount of information at the right level and really meeting our units where they're at. Most of them are not technical or technology specialists. Doing a lot of work ourselves to prepare the information, so it's only the right amount of information in a language that they can understand. And it does take some time to prepare the reports, to think about things from our unit's perspective, but then it does, over time, we're seeing it save us quite a bit of time. The other thing is, it's been interesting that the team has been energized by this, that it's allowed us to, in a way, feel like we're more living up to the values of the team, and that we're able to meet our units in a much more strategic, helpful, forward-thinking way, and less constantly reactive to the mountain of support tickets that could come our way. So that's the core of what I wanted to start with, to talk at you. It is a whole team effort. I'm just the tip of the iceberg. Everybody's contributing to how we support our units. And I would love to hear what questions you might have for me, for us, and what you all are up to, and what are the challenges that you're facing that maybe you want to bring up.
From the chat, there have been 2 comments. Joey says that starting meetings 10 minutes after the hour has been quite a game changer. And Tori responded that their team tries to end 10 minutes early, but it's hard to enforce when folks get into the meetings, but that 10 minutes early is a great change. So it sounds like that's a great tip.
Hey, Marion, great presentation. This is Carol.
Hey, Carol.
I want to hear more about how you communicate your messages. You said multiple channels. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So we send a newsletter probably every 6 weeks to our list of editors. We, at the same time, have a user wiki on a tool called Slite that we keep up to date. So part of our release management is understanding what's coming through in our sprint cycles that's going to have an impact on our editors and on our documentation, and just rolling that into our sprint practices. We have set up a Slack community of practice channel, where we are trying to get out of the picture. So the idea is, at some point, the editors can ask each other, hey, we have a challenge around featuring our alumni. What have other units done, right? We are not the experts in the content, so I think we're really trying to connect them with each other. sometimes we know which sites have done well and where we can point them to. Sometimes we just don't. We can't keep our eyes on that many sites and that many pieces of content. We do a lot of user training. We take whatever opportunities we have for user training in support tickets. So support ticket comes up and we'll include a link to the user guide that explains to them where they can get the information. And then in YouTube, there's a playlist with the video version of how do you become a fairly competent web editor. Here are the 3 pieces of training that you need to get through, and then you'll be able to get going on the site. So I'm probably forgetting something, but these are some of the mediums and channels that we've been working with to communicate with them. Is that kind of what you're looking for?
Yeah, this is great. How do you keep track of your editors?
Well, there's a couple of different things. We have Salesforce. So we have a Salesforce instance for all of our sites with some of our key people on there. But some of our sites have too many people, and we're not going to keep track of 40 editors in Salesforce for a given unit. We have a script we can run that will scrub all of our sites and output a list of actual active contributors and site owners on all of our sites. So we run that fairly regularly to keep an eye on who should be added, who should be removed from our processes. And we have a mailing list of editors that is self-add, self-remove. That is another place where we have that. So we, in essence, we have it in a few different places, right? The most up-to-date is probably in the sites, but it's not tightly integrated into our mailing list. Salesforce allows us to have more of the decision makers if we need to have bigger conversations, and then the script allows us to run this.
We have a
How are we doing at the moment?
We have a question in from the chat. This is from Joey. Hi, Marion. Would you mind showing an example of the continuous care sheet of what site managers, editors would see? Is there a follow-up action items for them to do from the sheet?
Sure. Before I do that, Joey, do you mind me if I can just check with Carol? Did that help, Carol?
Yes, I have a follow-up question, but I also want to see this. So let's go do this first.
Okay. And I will say what's tough is that the sites integrate with systems that do not have a master system for authority management, right? So we're also trying to figure out practices for how do we keep things in sync with folks who have access to course tagging, event entry, people profile editing, and so on. All right. This is a recent overview sheet of one of our maintenance reports. So it says, why are you getting this? What's in this? What are you supposed to do with it? And here are resources for it. And it's color coded. And you can look at each tab if you want to see the broken links, if you want to see the editors, if you want to see the importers, if you want to see the documents. The broken links and the editors, it's boring. I mean, it's what you would expect it to be. Here's a link, here's where it's placed on, here's where it's broken. This is what the importers sheet looks like. So it's a little complex, but it says for your events importer, we have a event, all events of African and African American studies are being pulled in. This explains a little bit. And when events come in that span multiple days, what do? They come in as a single multi-day event. That's a setting we have on our event importers. For the most part, our units prefer to keep a long-standing exhibition as a single event so it doesn't flood their upcoming events, but that's a toggle they have on their site. Oops, let me go back. For our courses, we're importing all courses under the subject code Africa AM. All of those courses will come into their site within 24 hours. For the people, we have an importer on the site. It's by work group. It's not by organization code. Here are the 6 work groups that are being used to pull information onto their sites. And then if if a student ID, if a profile comes in through, let's say, the courtesy work group, it'll automatically be tagged as a courtesy faculty. If it comes through the staff work group, it'll automatically be tagged as a staff. That's what this setting, this yes setting is saying here in B13. Setting is if an event is unpublished or somebody leaves Stanford, it's on the website. And right on this site, what happens is nothing, which means the profile will live on the website. And there's a couple of other options. When is unpublished that profile? And that's often a question we get is, this person has left the university, their profile doesn't exist in Stanford profiles. Why are they still on my website? And that's usually the answer. Joey, is there anything else you wanted me to show? Show one more, because I know I have one more. This is the site improve. How do you navigate site improve and the old documents? And this is a lot of information we were throwing at them, but essentially there's a number in yellow that says you have 28 documents that are older than 3 years. Click here to see a full list. Here's how to navigate the page once you get to the list and what to do about them. Review them, decide if they're still relevant. If they're still relevant, there's nothing to do. If they're not relevant, consider taking them down from your site.
And Joey says, no, that looks great. Thank you.
And Carol, I saw you waving and you're on my screen.
This is great. This is really fun. Really, if not fun. Yeah, it's fun. I'm curious how you said, how do you tell people about accessibility issues? Do you have another tab that I'm not seeing?
How do I tell them about accessibility issues? No, that's how we built our custom training list. We had a list of all of the issues. We had a list of all of the DQ courses. We cross-referenced them, built a matrix, and then said, okay, what's the tightest set of courses that will get us everything covered? And what customizations might we want?
If you're tracking it for an individual site, though, if you're, as you're in your report, how do you express that they might have an accessibility issue they need to address?
So two answers there. In one of our earlier reports, we send them a custom list of the audio and video items that needed to be captioned and transcribed that we had noticed on their site. So they got a custom set of items. And then editorially, the module, which is inside their site, I think is the most daily feedback loop that they get. So they're looking, and I can log into a site if you want.
So you don't do anything beyond editorially?
Well, we do a lot of things beyond editorial.
I mean, for accessibility, you don't, sorry, let me repeat that. You do a lot of things. What I mean is you don't include any accessibility issues in that report for a site.
We do sometimes, but we've been changing what we've included because we included them last time and we didn't have a chance to re-scrub and assess every single site in the last couple of months. We didn't include it in this one round. So this is editorially, right? This is the editorially. It says there is no red alerts, but there's some yellow warnings. If I click, it says there are 4 issues, and it's going to say this first one. Whoops. It's struggling with my presentation mode, maybe. It's saying this one looks like a heading, but it's not actually a heading. Should it be a heading, right? You can even click in and look at the heading outline. And then it's saying, these images have no alt text. Are they decorative? Are they proper images? So that's the editorially feedback they get once they logged in as an editor directly in Skype. And I can try to pull up one of the older maintenance reports if you want me to dig, but maybe we see if anybody else has a question.
I do. How are you tracking the success of these reports and sort of iterating on them over time? Because you mentioned that you were doing different things in previous reports. How are you deciding what to include?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's a little bit of an art at the moment and not a science. How we know how they're received is the emails that I get in return because I share out the reports from my email, and I get a lot of, oh, wow, thank you, this is great, helping us prioritize, and we're so glad you're sending them out. So that's one pulse check that we're getting. There's a fair number of units that do not tackle them as quickly as the others. And I think that's fair to say, right? We're always going to see a spread of how proactive some of the units are going to be. But we decide what gets in the reports. I think that's more of the art part, is based on how we're looking ahead at what's coming down. So if you think about, we started with the box retirement, then we know there's been a big push on accessibility. So then that got into the reports. We always know we want to keep things as unbroken and with the right level of access. So those two bits of information are always going to be in there. And then why we included importers this time around is because we were noticing from support that we were starting to get a lot of questions around importers. So I don't know that I have a better answer than this. They're just sort of instinctive, maybe.
No, I think that's a totally fair answer. I think it's a challenge that we're all facing, is what information to share out, because we know information overload's a thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say we do not, it takes a number of hours to prepare. It takes a lot of hours to prepare those reports. We do not prepare them for every single unit. We only prepare them for core big units that have content that is regularly updated, right? We have a couple of very small size that are fairly static, and it's just not worth everybody's while to do this. We just have slightly different conversations with them.
So Marion, this is Carol again. How long have you been doing these reports? When did, I guess when Box started, right?
Yeah, so fall 2022, I think. A year and a half. Is that right? Let me go back. Yeah, we started preparing them in the fall 2022 and sending the first ones out in winter 2023, so just over a year.
Oh, I know what my other question was. When you, if you see that there's somebody on the site you're going to remove, what's the process for that?
One second, I think I've pulled up a good example of the accessibility.
Oh, good.
It's turning a little bit. All right, so this was fall 2023. One of our tabs was text. Gives them a link to the place on their site where they can see every image that is missing alt text and do something about it. Or there's a custom view that they have built on their sites where they can edit that. And it gives them the why and the what. And oh, maybe this is not the right one. I wanted to see if I could pull up the unit that needed to fix some of its video and audio. What was your question again, Carol? While I pull that up.
Well, the question was if you find somebody that gets permissions on the site and you don't want them to have permissions on the site, what that process looks like to remove
it's
them.
usually less that we decide we don't want them to have permission. It's more that our unit tells us, oh, they're no longer here, they've moved. It's actually a fairly complex process based on where they've moved to. So we'll do that. Okay, so here's an audio video captions. here's the why, here's the what to do about it. And then in this case, I think they just had a channel on YouTube that they needed to get to. We give them a link. Oh, and then they had some SoundCloud. There's none from 2023, so it's less of a priority, but here's what this particular unit needed to do about this. So we're trying to really prepare the data as much as possible. And I understand this might not be possible on your scale, but on our scale, we felt this was a way to make it feel like we weren't just dumping work on that, but really we manage processes. Well, Tori's on the call, and Tori and I have been working on this, but we now have a new process where we're defining if they're moving within Stanford, if they're moving within H&S, if they're moving outside of Stanford. If they're moving outside of Stanford, our systems are SUNET ID based. It's not urgent, right? Essentially, they cannot log back in and do anything. If they're moving within Stanford, it's out of H&S, then that's one set of processes. If they're moving within H&S, it's another set of processes. We'll keep them on our mailing list. They're still a web editor. They're just on a different unit. So we'll update them in Salesforce. We'll update them on the Drupal sites. We'll update them on the Google Analytics. From leaving H&S, we'll remove them from our mailing list, from Salesforce, from the Google sites, and so on. So it is a non-fun manual process, is the answer. I did an analysis of how quickly we should do these things. Happy to share with you. It's a tough problem, honestly. Managing editor access at scale in a timely fashion is a tough problem.
And I'll say, just to jump in to that, what Marion is saying is that we often don't, there's no automatic way to get informed of those. So I think a lot of that is to build off of the maintenance reports or continuous care reports. We get a lot of that information around the same time when people respond and say, oh, actually this person's moving on, or, you know, we get notices from our dean's office that things are shifting or what have you. So that's also something that we're trying to figure out as an automated process. I'm not sure if anyone has done anything like that or has ideas, but I know that that's been a piece of the puzzle.
Thank you, Tori.
No, we do something very similar where we just have a spreadsheet of all of the editors, and then it's a manual process when someone leaves. Again, it's easiest when they leave Stanford because then the SUNET authentication goes away.